Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 214. Today we are talking about the property development process, the exact steps you take to do a successful property development. So let's jump on into episode 214. Hello and welcome to episode 214. Hey Bob.
Hey Hilary.
How's your day been?
Oh, hectic, hey. There's so many different things I've been doing.
Moving parts today.
Moving parts, yeah.
Yeah, the old developer moving part day. I hear you. So Bob, what's your tip for the day?
Oh, I know one that came out of the weekend when we did the masterclass.
What's that?
Well, we know how good I am at IT. I leave it to everyone else. But apparently it was set up as a Zoom. So every time somebody came on that was using the AI note thing or whatever it is, it stopped my clicker from working. So I was crazy there, clicking away. Nothing happened. All of a sudden a slider jump up and then nothing for a while there.
So what we learned there.
Well, is there a way to prevent that? There must be a setting somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can't just, for those listening, looking at the camera, I think you can't just assume that it's acceptable to take notes, because that it did mess up the, it kind of made it a bit glitchy for Bob. He kept going, oh, my clicker's not working. And then we worked out it was every time somebody put their AI note taker on. So yeah, I get you. I think we'll find out. That is a great tip. It's a reminder for Shelley. Yep. Can you please check that that we check a box that says no AI note takers, because it's a pain. Cool. So today we're going to go through the property development, the exact process, the 9 steps that Bob teaches, that we teach at Property Mastermind here. So we're just going to whiz through them, talk about some things that we see people often making mistakes on, the bits they rush. I'm also going to cover what inspired it, and just a few other things around the 9 steps that I'm sure you're going to find very useful. Before we start, though, giving away the book as I do this week, the book Property Millionaires Exposed goes to Thomas Pascoe. Thomas, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to working with you. Thomas has joined the mentoring program with his wife Donna, so that's exciting for those guys, and we're really excited to be working with you. Okay, Bob, we're going to talk about the 9-step framework, the process that we teach here at Property Mastermind. And before we kick into it, this was inspired by you, and what was the inspiration? What made it 9 steps?
Well, 9's a nice number.
Yeah.
But there's more than 9 single steps. But these are like the big headings as we'll go through the 9 of them. And so for me, they're just the major stepping stones, I guess, typically on a project. But within every step that we talk about today, obviously there's mini steps. And if you added up every tiny little thing that you do in a property development, there'd be a lot of steps. But even something like finance, well, there's lots of little steps. It isn't one step. But yeah, so basically I took out the major steps and gave them a name.
Broke them all down and wrote everything that's involved in them. Yeah, and you know what's interesting, as you were saying that, and I've never thought of it like this, is that they intertwine. Once you've got one, you start the next one, and there's a tangle of them, as the blend is probably, they blend well, and that's how you go from one to the other. And they still blend at different times too, don't they? If we look at something like finance, that starts and it blends into the others, and DD starts and it'll start blending, and feasibilities will blend because of how you use feasibilities. Okay, so it was just you deciding, if you took the helicopter view, look down, they were the steps that were the major steps. Did you ever have more or less than 9, or that's pretty much how you like to do it?
No, I have, just in quick teaching. I mean, I've had 6 steps. In our workshop.
And you just bring it more. And
yeah. Like things like, we'll have a look in a moment, due diligence and feasibility I have as 2 different steps. But they, as you say, they're interrelated, they overlap, and you could make them a step if you wanted to. And so I combine a couple of steps in one presentation where I said 6 steps. But in our workshop, it's something like 16 steps, because, 3-day workshop, I mean,
you've got time to
there's
unpack.
a lot of detail, everything you ever need to know about property development. So I've busted that into 16 steps. It's not that 9 steps misses out on anything. It's just that I might break one of the 9 steps into 2 steps, for instance. And so that's how you end up.
Sounds like you're dancing, Bob.
2-step.
Into a 2-step.
Do the two-step.
Well, just on that, we do have our workshop coming up. It looks like it's full and we've extended the room. There might be a few seats left, but if you were thinking about coming, don't muck around, because we did get to maximum and we were able to get a bigger room, which is epic. So great place for networking, joint venture partners connecting with us. We hang out the whole time, fabulous education. So if you're interested in attending the workshop in September, which is the 19th, 20th and 21st of September this year, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there'll be a link below and you can reach out. You can either book a call with me and see how that might happen, and of course we have the repeat offenders, which means once you've paid the full price once, you pay a very minimal rate to come again. So it's a fabulous event. And if you are considering coming, you don't want to muck around too long. Okay, so Bob, let's go through the 9 steps, just sort of briefly, and give me an overview of what we basically discuss in the 9 steps of property development. So first one is finding a site.
Yeah, finding a site. There might be a couple of little preliminaries you might do, like working out how much you can afford before you go and look for one. But as far as the big steps go, yeah, finding a site, and nothing happens until you find a site. And look, sometimes I've had people come out of a workshop and find a site within 3 days. But I've also had people who take a lot longer than that. And there's a lot of variables as to why it might take longer. And some of them are market driven and some of them are personally driven, I suppose. But until you've got a site, you can't get your teeth into anything.
And it's what we teach here is how to find a site that works, finding a site that stacks up. There's a lot of things that goes into. It's not just like you drive past a site and think that'd be fabulous, which are conversations I have with people a lot. There's a site there, I see a site there, and you think, well, there's lots of sites, but it has to tick boxes. And finding a site that ticks all the boxes. Okay, so the next one we've got DD, due diligence. What do you cover mostly in that one?
Yeah, so assuming we've found a site that looks okay, now we've got to decide, is it okay? And that's what the due diligence is about. So one of the obvious ones would be something like zoning. If we want to do townhouses, is it zoned for townhouses? If we want to do a duplex, is it zoned for duplexes, or is it big enough to do a duplex? Sometimes with duplexes, you just have to meet a certain size lot. It might be the same zoning as a normal house, but in some places it might be a separate zoning. So zoning is important, and townhouses, it'll be a different zoning again. So we have to understand that as part of our due diligence. And then we start looking at other things, like services. If we're going to do this subdivision, if we're going to do this 3 townhouse project, do our services work? Can we get a sewer connection to each of the 3 townhouses? Can we get stormwater off the block? Other things like power and everything, that'll already be there. But, deals have died because of services, people not being able to get the stormwater off the block or a sewer connection. So that's all part of that due diligence process to say, well, I've found a block of land, I've found a site. Is it going to work? And why might it not work? And so that's a whole process going through a tick sheet. Like in our course, we've got a thing called a due diligence check sheet or a checklist, where there's a whole range of things that you work your way through just to make sure you don't miss anything. It's good to have a list to look at rather than do it off the top of your head. There's quite a few points that you need to look at.
And how you look at those and where you go to look at those, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The next one we've got feasibilities. Whoa, that's that one, isn't it? That's the one
numbers.
that freaks everybody out.
Yeah. It's the numbers, and property development is a lot about numbers and getting the numbers right and making sure you've got a deal that, what we say, stacks up. And that means that it produces enough profit for you to be worth your time and effort, but enough profit for the financier. And sometimes when we meet people who aren't experienced in property development, we have that subject, don't they? Where they say, oh, it makes 200,000, I'm just going to do it anyway. But it might need to make more than that. It might need to make 300,000 for it to be viable for a financier to actually give you the money.
Because they have their own DD, their own due diligence, their tick boxes. And the great thing about having a good feasibility calculator that prints out the reports, because it gives you the right reports to give to the financier, which is fantastic, isn't it? Like, it just makes it clean, tidy, and gives them what they want, which makes it easier for them. It's kind of like you don't go to your accountant with a box of papers and tip them on their desk. Same with
have
dealing.
done that.
I know. I think I can imagine you would have back in the day before digital.
Yeah, so really important to get the numbers right, because there's a few moving parts to a feasibility. First of all, is the particular item. I mean, that could be something like architect's fees, for instance. So you have to know the items. If you leave items out, very few people would put more items in. They'd leave them out because they don't know all the different items that make up a feasibility, that make up a property development. So if you leave some out, they're cost items. You're going to make the feasibility look better than it really is. And then the other thing is, well, what's the dollar value for that cost item? Like if you're doing a duplex and you've got the architect's fees, well, that's good. That's the item. But how much? Is it 5, 10, 15, 20, 25,000? I mean, that's important as well. And then, the timing of things.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. The timing. That's because money costs money, and then knowing how to do that. The timeline beside everything that goes in your feasibility is important. I remember a while ago we met with somebody who lived near us, and they wanted to have a coffee with us to chat about property development, and they'd been given feasibility a feeso calculator from, one was a buyer's agent, one was somebody in bank finance, I think, a mate of theirs. They've been given several calculators, and then they got ours, and they was like, oh my god, why didn't I just start here? Because it just had everything, because the other ones just didn't know what they needed to have in them and just didn't fully understand how to put it together.
Well, they're not property developers. They wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, and they're
That's
designed.
dangerous.
Yeah, it is, but that's also designed for their outcome. So they're as a buyer's agent, as a bank financer.
Oh, I've seen those. They leave GST out. They leave a lot of stuff out. They leave sales commissions out. They talk about equity uplift, which has got nothing to do with profit. And the equity uplift is really set for somebody who's purchasing and not developing and not selling. So there's no agent's commission like you develop and sell. Different GST arrangement, like it's quite different. And so you're right, it might suit their purposes, but it doesn't suit the purposes of a developer.
But somebody new to development who doesn't really know what they're doing thinks, awesome, I've got myself a free feasibility calculator, or they've given me a feasibility. It's like,
I met an accountant once who had his own little feasibility calculator, and when I looked at it from an accountant, would you mind? He'd forgotten the GST.
Oh my goodness,
it's not insignificant.
No.
So our feasibility calculator is great, as you know. It tells you exactly what you should pay for a block of land, not a cent more, and that's a big thing. And full cash flows, everything that's in it, and it makes you look really professional when you front up to a financier or something like that, not just scratchings on a piece of paper.
No one wants to turn up with scratchings on the back of a napkin. The next one we've got is finance, the big finance. Oh my goodness! Remember, I used to do reno, so that was never as big a deal. Finance, my gosh, it's like the be all and end all, isn't it, of property development? So much is around finance.
Well, you got to get the money.
Yeah.
Show me the money, as young Tommy said. So getting the finance is critical. And with property development, I mean, the two big things is that there's really two stages of finance. It's not like a reno, there's really one stage, but property development, the first stage of finance is when you buy the site. And then you go ahead and get your approvals. And the next stage is at the construction stage, where you normally have to tip in a bit more money to get more money to build it. And so finance is two stages for a start. But, the big thing, if you're using commercial finance, interest capitalised, don't have to find it every month. Don't have to put your hand in your pocket like you do on your own home
Don't
loan.
need serviceability. That right now, there's people listening, Bob, and they're like, what? I don't need serviceability to do property development.
But there's a lot in finance.
Yeah.
Like we've done finance seminars like ourselves, like 4 or 5 hour ones just on property development finance. So there's a bit in it, but it's important to know that it's not like buying a house.
No,
nothing like that at all, or an investment property. But it's one of my favourite subjects, as you know.
Yes, Bob loves talking finance.
I do.
Yeah, he really does. And also with finance, how much it's really tied into the feasibility, as in, and that makes sense even as I say it, but we have it as a separate step. But yeah, it is just massively tied into it.
Yeah, because you were saying before how some things like overlap or integrate into each other. So the feasibility tells you everything about the finance. It tells you about how much equity you're going to need. It tells you about how much interest you're going to pay. And it just rolls out the whole cash flow, over the period of the project. And so it's really important to know. The financiers want to know. But those two things are like really heavily integrated.
I think I actually missed out acquiring a site, which was
Yeah, you
number
probably
4.
did. But
I
that's
did.
okay.
Yeah. So then we've got acquiring a site, and that's really
That's pretty straightforward. I mean, we talked about the first step of finance being to acquire the site. Not a lot to say about that other than the fact is that, it's more often than not, you're just going to be signing a contract. Occasionally it might be something like an option. Some of the sites we buy for our property development company, Ultra Urban, they're larger projects a bit and a bit different, maybe industrial ones. We're doing a few of those at the moment. We're looking at some other stuff. But it's not unusual to purchase those sorts of things under a put and call option, but pretty unusual to buy just like a split or a 3-lot subdivision, or maybe a site for 3 townhouses or a duplex under a put and call. But most people that you're buying from, a lot of agents, they don't understand them. So nearly always just going to be a contract.
Bob, do we need to do a podcast on call options and put and call options and
I don't know. We could.
that sort of business? Maybe we could.
Yeah,
I think maybe we could, because it is quite interesting. Just understanding how they work. I remember you used to talk about it like dating. You said, okay, if we used to talk about me, and if you had a call option over me or a put and call option over me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Had the right but not the obligation to,
yes.
to settle and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll have to dig that up. It's quite funny.
It was. I think you did it at a workshop one day. I remember you
just totally off the cuff. I never prepared it, so I have to think about it.
The next one we've got is construction, and that's another one that I think is slightly underestimated. That's my guess. I don't think people realise what goes into finding the right builder and getting the contract drawn up and everything that goes into that. Would you agree?
Yeah, particularly if it's your first project, your first building contract. And it's a different building contract typically to, maybe if you did a house and land package once and bought a block of land, built your own home, that's pretty straightforward. They're little resi contracts. And you might get by with one of those. Well, it depends what you're doing. If you were to do a 2-lot subdivision and build 2 houses on the new lots, that'd be a single house, pretty simple contract, what I call a little resi contract. Once you're up into multiple units and those sorts of things like, say, townhouses, then it can be a different contract, more commercial contract. And while they still might be HIA or master builders contracts, they're a lot more wordy, a lot more conditions. They might go on for 50 pages. And so, a bit more complex once you start to do slightly, like when I say bigger projects, I might be just talking about a 3 or a 4-pack.
A lot more to read through.
Yeah, a lot more to read through, a lot of things to understand. There's a whole heap of terminology in there, PSs, PCs, variations.
Few good acronyms.
Yeah. EOIs, EATs, extension of time, all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of moving parts to a building contract. And it's like everything. It's about being taught about it, learning about it.
And then we've got marketing, which I kind of like marketing. That's the fun side, I think. I think out of everything, that's probably one of the parts that I probably would get into the most. And that's not, I don't know why actually. Maybe it's because we get to see the end result. But the marketing almost, and that's why I thought about having a chat with a past mentoring student who's a fabulous real estate nearby. I would just, at what point when you got marketing, do you bring them in at the start when you're looking at, or sort of finding a site and acquiring? There are great reasons for doing that, looking at what the market's after, and a good real estate agent will tell you that. But then going to sale, and I remember I did an interview once with a past mentoring student, and he had a 4-pack, and the timing of selling those, because the 2 front ones, there were 2 at the front, 2 at the back, but the 2 front ones, the one on the left-hand side had a big power pole out the front. And so I spoke with the real estate agent, and it was a massive strategy for her. And so she sold that one first, didn't she, to get a price, because she didn't want to be left with that one and have to discount it because of the pole. She got a reasonable price, and she was able to elevate the prices after that, which was really strategic. So real estate agents, they have to know quite a bit. And that was a great strategy that she had. That was down in Brisbane, wasn't it?
It was in Brisbane. It was a 4-pack. That was Tony's project.
Yeah.
also, like that front unit, as well as looking at a big lamppost, it did have a bit of an outlook, but it was also on a relatively busy road. So you had sort of noise and not a great outlook. The ones at the back didn't have a great outlook, but they were private, quieter, and
Had a bit of a back area, sort of fenced
had a
in.
better courtyard. So she got rid of that front one, which you could say was the worst one of the four, set the price, and then went up from there, as opposed to selling one at the back. It might sound like the same thing, but it's not. But it's all downhill from there.
And that's just one small thing that a marketer understands to do, or that your real estate agent or your marketing team or whoever's doing that, whether you're advertising, is it a rental market, is it owner occupier, and there's a whole different market strategy for all that sort of thing. So never underestimate, I believe, the power of a good real estate agent.
Oh, they're gold, even right at the beginning. Just market research, getting to understand the market that you're going to build in. Pricing, very important. Who are the buyers likely to be? Like you said, are they owner-occupiers? Are they investors? What are their requirements? What's an owner-occupier want? What's an investor want? They're not quite the same thing. What about the standard of finish? These are the thing about real estate agents is their job is talking to buyers. So, and what you want to build what the buyers want. And so you go to the real estate agent, well, what's selling? What do buyers want? And make sure that that's what you put in yours.
So they do quite a bit because they've got all that knowledge, but then they need to have that other understanding of which to sell first. I mean, we did something similar last year when we went to market with the duplex. Do we sell the one on the front first or the one on the side street? So what was the strategy behind selling the front one first? Because we staged the front one. What was that reason?
Well, mainly the address. So it was on a corner.
Right.
And the first unit was on a road that is known to be the best street in the suburb. The other one, which adjoined it, was actually technically on a side street. And so just the name of it alone.
So that was the strategy. Yeah, great.
Yeah. And then we go from there. So, yeah, marketing, pretty important. But I can understand why you like it.
I think I just like going through the end properties and going, when it's staged, that's kind of my bit. Like, yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, but I mean, you even enjoyed the marketing meeting we had the other week on our industrial project, not the other week, it's a few weeks ago now, for the industrial project, which is quite unemotional compared to residential sales. Now, it's very analytical, but like even that is, you're still building for the end user in mind. They're not going to live there, but they're going to operate a business from there, or it's an investor going to buy it, rent it out, same thing.
Do you know what I found interesting there was there were two different companies coming together to market the same thing in the same meeting, wanting to work together because they realised there was actually two markets and they would do better by working together, which, they were two completely different real estate, industrial companies. But that kind of blew me away, and it makes you think that's real strategy selling, and which is basically what we're talking about, that strategy sell. And same things. Yeah. I suppose I love strategy as a thing.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend two agents on a residential product, but quite different. I mean, we've got 16 units to sell on that particular project. And some of the sales will go to investors who will then rent them out. And some of them will go to owner-occupiers who simply want to buy it for their business. And one agency specialises in businesses that owner-occupier businesses. And the other one specialises in investors. And because they're industrial and it's all unemotional, no one's going to live there. They're two quite different markets, they're two quite different real estate agents who can work harmoniously together, and they have in the past. And so we're covering both bases with two lots of experts.
Can you see, like, we've gone, finding a site, due diligence, feasos, acquiring the site, finance approvals, construction, marketing, and you could really talk for 3 days like we do at the workshop. But there is so much you could discuss because, as you're saying that, I want to bring more up, but it'll be.
Well, that's why the last class was 3.5 hours on those 9 steps.
Yes,
because we just go into more detail.
And then finally, Bob, we've got settlement, which is sell it up and
that's good.
Bank the money.
Give me the money.
Give me the money.
Give me the money. So settlement's important because that comes off the back of the sales. Well, that's how you pay your loan off. The sooner you start getting settlements, the sooner you can drop your loan down. And look, it's exciting.
It is.
Just about every time you sell a property, it's a 6-figure profit. think about it. Like, I don't know that you can develop anything where maybe a 2-lot subdivision. Even then, most 2-lot subdivisions these days, you'd make more than 100,000 a lot.
Hmm.
If it's got the proper margin. There's plenty of 2-lot subbies that don't make enough money and you don't do them. I'm talking about something that makes margin. It's a 6-figure, and particularly if you build anything. I can't imagine a duplex that you only make 100,000 out of, because
No one's going to finance
it'd
that.
be too cheap. Everything about it.
Hmm.
So like six-figure lumps of money basically landing in your bank account. 6 figures every time you do it, and sometimes it might be twice that. You might be selling something at $1 million. And it could be like $160,000-$70,000 profit on every sale.
See, you just start talking big money. And that's probably for people, if you're new and you want to get into property development, it's really interesting how quickly you go from talking about $30,000 to $300,000 to $1 million. To the numbers, the more you say them, the easier they become to say, and they don't even mean anything. They're just a number. And it's interesting hearing you say that. In fact, I was just as you were talking about that, one of the investors in that project sent me an email today, and he's keen to do something else. He said he heard me talking about it on the podcast, that we were getting close, and we are getting close to something else. So you're on my VIP list. But I've got a couple of 100,000 spare, and it's an interesting world we live in when the profits you can make are a couple of 100,000. Yeah, easily, for doing absolutely nothing for some people. If you're an investor, but if you're doing it yourself, if you're actually doing a development, so much. Bob, I'm going to ask a few questions, the sticky ones. What step do new developers often get wrong? What's the most common one? If you had to summarize, if I had to say the one that mostly they get wrong, what is that?
Oh, it'd have to be feasibilities. They get all the numbers wrong because they don't know what they don't know. And good luck Googling or AIing that stuff up. So like I said before, it's a combination. It's the items. Like on the plus side, the income items that's what you sell them for. And you better get that right too, because that's the biggest number that has the biggest effect. But everything else is pretty much cost. You think about all the costs, land and council fees, consultant fees, finance, they're all costs. And so you need to know all the costs in a project to do the feasibility correctly. And every time you leave one out, you're making the deal look better than it is. And so just the items and the dollar value.
What about
what's it cost to do 3 townhouse project? Each townhouse is 160 square meters. Well, that's important.
what's the answer to that, Bob?
Well, there's no specific answer because I don't know what the standard of finish is as well. But it could be 1.1, it could be 1.5, like depending on the same with the duplex units. Your duplex unit could be 600 or 900 or over $1 million. Some of the ones really upmarket ones, we've done $900, $1 million per unit, not per pair.
What's interesting for you listening, if you're new, as Bob said, depends on the standard of finish, and that goes right back to the start of finding a site, because you're looking for a site and you have to understand what standard of finish is going to sell in that area. So it all just intertwines, like we said, like that blend is so important.
The biggest influence is the size. How many square meters? You're talking thousands of dollars a square meter, 2,000, 3,000, 3,500 a square meter, whatever it is. And so, like, every square meter counts. So, in your market, 3-bedroom townhouses might be 160 square meters, but in another suburb there might be 220 square meters because they're just bigger and more opulent. And so, when you start talking about build costs, it's going to vary a lot.
What about experienced developers? What is something that they mostly underestimate? Or what are even experienced and even inexperienced? But what is the underestimated thing?
I think what it is. I think it might be the timing. We talked about the items. We talked about the costs in a feasibility. The amount of time it takes. Everyone gets a little bit optimistic, and I've seen that happen. It's not very often I'll look at somebody's feasibility and I think, oh, they've made it go too long. It's nearly always too quick, and they jump steps. And quite often I've seen plenty of feasibilities that are showing up as 16 months when there really should be 22 months. There's another 6 months there. They're going step, but not allowing for time in between. And a good example would be like, say you get your building permit. I've seen plenty of people start start building like almost straight away. Well, you got to package up your whole building permit. Then you got to like choose your builders. Then you got to, send them out the packages. Then they got to price it. And the busier they are, the longer it takes because they've got to get all prices in from trades and suppliers. Then you get their, then you get like the answers back, and then you got to choose a builder, and that's always a bit more negotiating. Then you got to get the contract. There's always a lot of back and forth on the contract. Then even after it's all signed, you got to finalise your finance, pay your deposit, and then the builder doesn't start that first day. He's got 2 or 3 weeks before he can start. And yet I've seen people like make that like a couple of weeks, and it's months.
I was just thinking when you were saying that about one mistake I remember hearing you talk about, and someone had come to us afterward and they had bought a site and they demoed straight away. They booked in the demolition, but there was months, and instead they could have had rent for that time, which is a bit of a rookie mistake. So that's something to remember, isn't it?
I've seen worse mistakes. On 2 occasions, I've seen somebody demolish the house before they got the DA, and they didn't get the DA.
Oh my goodness. What happened? They had to re-erect the house?
No, you can't. It's all gone. They now got a vacant block of land with no rent, whereas previously they had a house that they could rent.
Nightmare,
particularly because that property had a bank loan on it. It was just an investment property, but it's going to turn into a development. And what they've done is they've destroyed the security. The bank thinks there's a house on there, and the lender is getting rent. Yeah, there's no house there anymore, and the lender's not getting any rent. Just jumped the gun.
So that's a classic example, and it leads into my next question, is when people don't follow the process, because there is a process for a reason. There are steps to follow for a reason. And if you don't follow the process in the right order, then you're likely to make they could be seemingly little things. You might think, oh, I'll just organise that now and then that's done, and thinking the next thing will happen, and just doing things out of the process or out of the order that it needs to be done in. So, Bob, why do you think, well, I suppose it's obvious. I was going to say, why do you think, a structured process is very important for people to follow? And do you find that there are some personality types that don't really follow that process so well?
Well, answer the last question, personality types, people that tend to rush into things by nature, that don't follow detail. It's all about speed, probably not a good. By the same token, you could get people that are micro detail, and then they'll just get paralysed and won't do anything. So you just got to be sensible. You got to understand that there is a process to everything. You have to understand the process. And also, like as I said, every step has a lot of micro steps. Like if you think about our course, when we're talking about something like finance, there's videos on finance, how it works and everything, but in each section, we've done flowcharts. So if you had a look at anything, I just chose finance as one, there's a flowchart that I can't remember. It might have 12 steps, let's say. Well, that's 12 steps to getting the finance, that flowchart, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. In our 9-step process, finance is 1 step. But then when you look at the flowchart, it might be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 steps, whatever it is. And so understanding those as well, and tick them off as you go. So process is really important.
I think that's probably, would you say that's the strength of a good property developer, just knowing how to follow the process? Well, it really is.
There's a lot of strengths to make a good property developer, but like not following the process is not a good one.
No.
So definitely following the process, and the good thing about it, there are people along the way. There's all different sorts of people involved in all the different processes, which once again, you have to understand who's involved in all those processes and coordinate them. But there's experts, which is good along the way to work with. But you better be an expert yourself as a property developer. You better understand the detail of property development, because to do it wrong is painful at the least and devastating at the worst.
I spoke with somebody today, and they'd done a couple of different courses. They hadn't done ours, and then they said it just seems so unclear. And I'm like, well, they obviously haven't got a process. But he came onto the 9-step he came onto the masterclass last Saturday. You can still get a link for that. So if you're listening, we did record it. So you're welcome to reach out via email and get a copy of that if you'd like to have a wee watch of that. It is 3.5 hours. You could, if you're like me, you probably watch it on 1.5 speed. I would definitely do that. But then I probably sat through the masterclass. What would it be on? Maybe 20 plus times, maybe more than that even. Yeah, I'd say more than that. But I think when you are looking for joint venture partners, people that can't do it on their own, they don't have enough equity to get started, they have to be so confident and understand that process so fully, because unless you can articulate and fully understand what you are proposing to somebody, an opportunity you're proposing to somebody, they're not going to jump on board. And I think that's where having a process makes it so much easier to understand the learning curve that you will go on, and understanding all the little things that go on inside. And for people, who are wanting to use joint venture partners, but even then for finance, the whole thing's necessary. It is very necessary. But I do think that when you fully understand property development by understanding it's a process and you follow it, you don't get emotional, you just do it. It makes it so much easier to communicate with, well, not just potential investors, but financiers, but everyone else that you have to deal with. You don't want to turn up sounding and looking like a complete idiot.
No, that won't work.
No, it won't work. So, Bob, I think we could probably wrap it up there, unless there's anything you'd like to say to finish off this podcast today.
No, only that while we've just talked about 9 steps, there's many, many steps that make up the 9 steps. You can't skip them.
No.
You've got to get them right. Look, I always say property development is a great way of making a lot of money if you do it right. And doing it right is really understanding all the steps, all the details, all the what ifs, who's involved along the way. And that's just the way it is.
Okay, well, as I said, we've got a workshop coming up in September. If you'd like to talk about what we have to offer, our Property Mastermind course, or whether that's the bundle or our mentoring program, you're welcome to book a call with me. There will be a link below in here, or you can head over to our website and just book a call with me. If there's anything else that I've mentioned that you'd like to know about, maybe investing in one of our ultra-urban projects, or I don't know, anything else, feel free to reach out. And Thomas, books in the post to you. We hope you've got something useful from today's episode, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye now.